Zorath soldiers marched into villages expecting surrender, only to find farmers and miners who fought like warriors, refusing to yield. On broken colonies, survivors rose from the rubble and joined the war effort, turning their grief into weapons. Even the way humans treated their enemies shocked the galaxy. Where other empires conquered and enslaved, the humans did something different. When they liberated a world, they gave food to the starving. When they captured prisoners, they gave them water and healing. They rebuilt what they destroyed. The Zorath had expected cruelty. Instead, they found mercy, and that mercy was more terrifying than human rage, for it showed that humanity fought not for conquest, but for survival, for justice, for a future. And still they would not stop. In the skies above Delta Prime, the humans faced their greatest test yet. The Zorath had gathered their largest fleet, determined to crush this rising fire once and for all. More than 1,000 Zorath warships filled the stars, their shadows blotting out the light. Against them came 600 human ships, battered but unbroken. The battle was chaos. Explosions lit the darkness. Hulls burned. Fighters screamed through the void. For every human ship destroyed, another pressed forward. For every human soldier lost, another stepped into the fight. The Zorath fought with numbers. The humans fought with something greater. Heart. At last, with a final push, the Terran fleet broke the Zorath line. The Empire's flagship burned, its wreckage tumbling through space. The Zorath fleet scattered, their commanders fleeing. In disbelief, Delta Prime was free, and the galaxy could no longer deny the truth. The council chamber fell into silence when the reports arrived. No one laughed, no one mocked. They sat in quiet fear, staring at the news. Humanity, the species they had called fragile, weak, and foolish, was sweeping aside one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. The elders stood once more, their glowing forms casting long shadows. You see it now, they said softly. You see what we tried to tell you. Humans do not stop. They fight beyond reason, beyond pain, beyond loss. They fight not because they wish to conquer, but because they cannot allow themselves to fall. That is why they are unstoppable. The Chancellor lowered his head. The laughter was gone from his voice. If they are truly unstoppable, he whispered, then what will become of us? No one had the courage to answer, for in their hearts, each member of the council already knew. The war was not ending. It was only beginning. The storm of humanity had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The victories of humanity no longer felt like whispers in the void. They thundered across the galaxy. Reports came in constantly, one after another, each more impossible than the last. Zorath worlds had fallen. Entire fleets once thought untouchable were shattered. Colonies that had been lost were now liberated. And in every place humans went, they rebuilt, healed, and uplifted, turning destruction into hope. The Council of Stars, which had once mocked the humans, now trembled in fear. The Drakthar, proud and fierce, could not hide the unease in their eyes. The Kashar, who had always measured power in numbers and death, hissed nervously. Even the Vayari nobles, who prided themselves on their sharp intellect, could no longer dismiss the truth. The Chancellor of the Council sat in his high seat, staring at the holographic maps of the galaxy. Lines of human victories crisscrossed the stars, red marks of Zorath defeat spreading further and further with every report. He clenched his hands, white-knuckled, as dread filled his chest. This cannot be, he muttered. They are too small, too young. They should have broken long ago. But the elders only shook their heads. Their glowing eyes, heavy with sorrow and certainty, bore into the hearts of the council members. You do not understand, they said softly. They are not just ships or weapons. They are not just armies or fleets. They are something the galaxy has never seen. Humanity. Every loss only strengthens them. Every wound only sharpens their resolve. You laughed at them once, but your laughter has become a warning for the future. The council members shifted uneasily in their seats. The arrogance that had ruled them now felt like a fragile mask, cracking with every report. The Drakthar commander, normally brimming with pride, growled low in his throat. I thought their fleets were weak. I thought we would crush them. I thought this war would be over in months, but... He stopped, unable to finish. The words had no meaning in the face of what humanity had accomplished. The Kashar ambassador clicked his mandibles rapidly, the sound nervous and harsh. How can a species so small, so fragile, wield such force? How can they strike fleets 3 times their size and survive? Even the Vayari, who had once mocked the humans' primitive ways, fell silent, their feathers ruffled in unease. It is unnatural, whispered one. Something we do not understand. The Chancellor finally spoke, his voice trembling. We ignored the elders' warnings, we mocked them. We called humans insignificant, and now, his voice faltered, now we face a truth we cannot deny. Humanity is unstoppable. The elders' eyes glowed brighter. It is not just their strength that is unstoppable, it is their spirit. You cannot measure them by ships or soldiers. You cannot control them by fear or by laws. You cannot break them with cruelty or with scorn. They rise, again and again, stronger than before, and nothing can stop them once they have decided to move forward. The council chamber was silent. For the first time in centuries, no one spoke, no one moved, and no one dared to laugh. The weight of their arrogance had crashed down upon them like a tidal wave. Reports continued to arrive. Colonies liberated, fleets destroyed, enemy commanders captured or fleeing in disgrace. Every victory carried a lesson. Humans do not fight for empire, for glory, or for wealth. They fight for survival, for justice, and for every soul lost along the way. They fight with grief in their hearts, and yet mercy in their hands. They fight with fire, but with honor. The Chancellor clenched, his jaw. He looked at the elders, whose faces showed both warning and sorrow. How do we stop them? He asked in a whisper, though he knew the answer was impossible. The elders did not answer. Their eyes turned outward, looking toward the stars where the humans were already moving. Ships sailed through space, fleets reformed, soldiers trained, and colonies rebuilt. Humanity was preparing for more than war. They were preparing to survive, to endure, and to rise again, no matter the cost. In that moment, every member of the council understood something they had never considered. They had underestimated a species that refused to be underestimated. They had laughed at a fire they could not douse, and now they were powerless to stop it. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Systems once loyal to the Zorath were changing hands. Planets that had been under strict control were now whispering the name of the humans in awe and fear. Across the void, species began to ask questions. Who are these humans? Why do they never stop? The elders finally spoke again, their voices echoing through the chamber like wind through an ancient canyon. You mocked them. You doubted them. You thought they were weak, small, fragile. But they are none of these things, and now you see the truth. Humanity cannot be stopped. They will rise against any empire, against any threat, against any doubt. Remember this day, Council of Stars, for it will mark the turning of all things. The Chancellor lowered his head. The arrogance was gone. Pride had been replaced by fear. Even the Drakthar and Kashar avoided eye contact. Even the Vayari, who once thought themselves wise, felt a chill they could not name. Somewhere, deep in the galaxy, the humans were unaware of the Council's fear. They were not seeking glory. They were simply living, rebuilding, fighting, surviving. Yet their actions had already shifted the balance of power in the stars. The turning of the Council was not just a moment of fear, it was a recognition of truth. The elders had spoken, and now at last the galaxy could not ignore them. Humans were unstoppable, and the Council, which had mocked them for so long, would never forget it. The galaxy had begun to tremble. The Zorath Empire, once feared across, countless systems now faced a force they had never imagined. They had crushed planets, burned colonies, and thought themselves untouchable. Yet humanity, the species they had dismissed, had not only survived, they had struck back with precision, courage, and unyielding spirit. It began quietly. Scouts, and small fleets slipped through Zorath defenses, striking at supply lines, communication hubs, and minor outposts. The Empire's leaders dismissed these attacks as nuisances. They are scattered, they said. They are small. Soon they will be gone. But each strike carried a lesson. Each strike taught the humans' enemies that cunning, bravery, and heart could outweigh numbers. Every Zorath officer who survived an ambush carried the memory of human ruthlessness and mercy, a combination they could not comprehend. The humans did not seek revenge for cruelty. They fought to protect what remained of their people, to save what others would destroy. And in doing so, they became unstoppable. The first major turning point came at the planet Korath. Korath had been a jewel of the Zorath Empire, a world fortified beyond reason. Its cities gleamed under twin suns, and its military bases were thought impregnable. No one had ever breached Korath. Their families enlisted, their hearts burning with vengeance. Young men and women who had never held a weapon before now trained with steel in their eyes. Scientists who had studied stars now poured their genius into warships. Engineers who had designed homes now built fortresses. Across Earth and its surviving colonies, the same words were whispered. We will not forget. We will not forgive. We will rise. The Zorath believed the humans were broken. They thought the fire of humanity was extinguished. But in truth, they had only fanned the flames. Even in the ruins of Mars, survivors crawled from the ashes. They buried their dead and raised their fists. Even on shattered Europa, distress signals carried through the void, swearing that those who lived would fight again. Every colony destroyed became a seed of rage planted deep in human hearts. The elders' words began to echo in hidden corners. People remembered them, though the council mocked them. They will not stop. They will rise again. And as the Zorath fleets prepared their next strike, and as the council laughed in ignorance, humanity was already changing. Their grief was no longer a wound. It was a weapon. The first blow had been struck, but it was not the end of humanity. Its HFY was the spark that would light a fire the galaxy had never seen. And somewhere, in the silence of the council chamber, the elders whispered one last warning, though none dared listen. You have awakened something you cannot control. The ashes of Mars still smoked. The ice of Europa still drifted with frozen bodies. The wounds of humanity were deep and raw, but out of those wounds, something new was born. The first blow had awakened a fire. At first, the galaxy believed humans would collapse. Colonies had been destroyed, fleets shattered, families torn apart. But instead of falling into silence, humanity began to rise. On Earth, the great cities were filled with mourning, but also with determination. Factories that once built machines of peace now thundered day and night, forging ships of war. Metal screamed as it was cut, shaped, and welded into weapons that would sail among the stars. Workers who had never known battle wiped sweat from their brows and whispered the names of lost loved ones as they built cannons and armor. In the military academies, cadets stood in silence as their instructors read the long lists of the dead. Their jaws tightened, their eyes burned, and when the call for war came, they answered without hesitation. Scientists who had dreamed of exploration now turned their genius to war. They designed engines faster than before, weapons sharper, shields stronger. They worked without rest, driven by grief and fury. Some whispered, "For my sister," as they tested new weapons. Others murmured, "For my child," as they crafted armor for soldiers. Every invention carried a memory of loss. Even old enemies on Earth set aside their rivalries. Nations that had fought for centuries now clasped hands, for they understood one truth. Humanity had only one enemy now. The Zorath had made sure of that. The fire of unity spread across the colonies that survived. Those who had once argued over trade or borders now worked side by side. On the mining stations, workers sang songs of vengeance as they pulled iron from the rock. On the farms of Titan, families sent food to soldiers without asking for payment. Humanity, once divided, became one. The Council of Stars did not see it. They only saw reports of burned colonies and assumed humanity was breaking. The Drakthar mocked them. The Kashar laughed. The Vaeri sang cruel songs of a dying people. The Chancellor sneered and told the council, "See, the humans scream, but soon they will be silent." But the elders shook their heads. Their glowing eyes saw further than reports. They whispered to each other, "The fire has been lit. It will grow. You will regret not listening." The fire first showed itself in the shadows of space. Small groups of human ships began to strike back. They were not large fleets, only scattered survivors armed with desperation. But they fought with a fury the Zorath had never faced. At the asteroid belt near Vega, 3 human frigates faced a Zorath cruiser. The humans should have retreated, but they did not. They fought for hours, their ships torn and burning, but they refused to flee. At the end, the Zorath cruiser exploded in a storm of fire. 2 human frigates were gone, but one survived, limping back to Earth with a message: "We will not bow." The story spread like wildfire. Across Earth and the colonies, people spoke of the frigates that fought the impossible battle. They called them heroes, proof that humanity was not finished. In the shadows of Orion's belt, another group of human ships ambushed a Zorath convoy. They struck like wolves, tearing apart the supply line, then vanishing into the void. Survivors spoke in awe of how humans fought with no fear, as if death itself could not stop them. Every battle, even the smallest, became a legend. Every human who fell became a symbol. The fire grew brighter with each sacrifice. Back on Earth, leaders gathered in a vast hall once used for peace talks, now filled with banners of war. The room was heavy with grief, but their voices were steady. They declared one truth that all of humanity would carry: we will not surrender. We will not forgive. We will fight until every colony is free, until every child can sleep without fear. We are humanity, and we rise. The speech echoed across the stars. Families on ruined colonies heard it and clenched their fists. Soldiers in training camps shouted in unison. Workers in factories hammered faster. Scientists worked harder. The fire of unity burned in every heart. The Zorath still believed victory was certain. They sent more fleets, more soldiers, more weapons, convinced that humanity would soon break. They did not understand that every strike only made humans stronger. On Mars, survivors of the destruction rebuilt shelters under the ruins. They swore oaths of vengeance as they carved the names of the dead into the rocks. On Europa, hidden survivors sent messages into space. We are still here. We will fight. The fire could not be extinguished. The council remained blind. They laughed at reports of human resistance. What are a few frigates against the fleets of the Zorath? They mocked. What are a few raids against an empire? But the elders did not laugh. They spoke once more, though the council barely listened. You look at the humans and see a dying flame, but you are wrong. You are watching the sunrise. They are only beginning. And so, while the galaxy mocked, while the Zorath raged, humanity rose. Their sorrow had turned into strength. Their wounds had become weapons. Their fire spread across every world, every heart, every soul. The rising fire had begun, and the galaxy had no idea how bright it would burn. The fire that had risen now became a storm. Humanity was no longer just defending. It was striking back. The Zorath had believed they could crush humans in weeks. They thought the first blow would break them forever. But now, the hunters found themselves hunted. The first great counterattack came at Vega. It was there the Zorath gathered a fleet 3 times larger than anything the humans could field. Their warships bristled with weapons, their commanders full of arrogance. They laughed as they prepared to finish the humans once and for all. But the humans did not fight like the Zorath expected. The Terran fleet was smaller, yes, but it moved with speed and precision. Human commanders did not follow the rigid patterns the Zorath were used to. They struck like wolves, darting in and out of the battle, hitting weak points, vanishing before the enemy could answer. They fought not as individuals, but as one mind, united by shared loss. At first, the Zorath mocked their tactics. They called it chaos, desperation. But soon their laughter turned into fear. Human ships broke through their lines, human fighters tore through their carriers, and human torpedoes found the hearts of their battleships. When the smoke cleared, the impossible had happened. The Zorath fleet was shattered. 3 times the strength, 3 times the firepower, yet crushed by the fury of humans who refused to die. News of Vega spread like lightning. Across the stars, species that had laughed at humans fell silent. Rumors whispered through every corner of the galaxy. The humans destroyed a Zorath fleet, a fleet 3 times their size. And humanity did not stop there. At Orion's belt, the Zorath fortress had stood for centuries. It was thought unbreakable, a wall of steel and fire. No empire had ever breached its defenses. But when the humans came, they came not with fear, but with fire in their veins. The battle raged for days. Zorath guns thundered, their fleets swarmed, but the humans kept coming. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. Ship after ship fell, but more pressed forward. At last, the humans broke through the defenses, stormed the fortress, and planted their banner over its ruins. For the first time in living memory, the fortress of Orion had fallen, and it was the humans who had done it. The galaxy trembled. The council chamber grew quiet. The mocking voices began to fade. The chancellor no longer smiled so easily. Even the Drakthar and Kashar, who had roared with laughter before, now sat in uneasy silence. But the elders only nodded, their sorrowful eyes glimmering. "We told you," they said. "They will not stop." Still, some in the council clung to arrogance. "They have won a few battles," hissed the Kashar, "but the Zorath are vast. Humanity cannot fight forever." "They bleed as we bleed," growled the Drakthar. "They will fall in time." But deep inside, even they began to fear. The war spread. The Zorath struck again and again, but each time the humans answered with greater fury. On distant worlds, the Grand Council of Stars was the heart of galactic politics. It was a place where the greatest civilizations gathered to decide the fate of the galaxy. The chamber was vast, built from crystal and metal older than memory, its walls glowing with the soft light of distant suns. Every species with power or pride had a seat here, and every decision made within its circle shaped the destiny of countless worlds. On this day, the chamber was crowded. Hundreds of delegates filled the tiers, their strange forms glittering under the light. Scaled lords from the Drakthar Empire stretched their wings lazily. Insectoid rulers of the Kishar clicked their sharp limbs against the marble floors. The Veiri nobles, creatures of feather and song, preened their wings in mock boredom. The chancellor of the council, draped in robes of shining silver, looked over the assembly with cold eyes. At the center stood the elders. The elders were not a species, but a mystery. No one knew where they had come from. They had been here before. Most empires even discovered the stars. Their bodies glowed faintly, their voices carried weight beyond words, and when they spoke, silence always fell. The council called upon them only in times of great importance. Now the elders stood together, their eyes heavy with sorrow, and their voices echoing as one. "Beware the humans," they said. A murmur passed through the chamber. Delegates leaned toward one another. Some laughed softly under their breath. The chancellor raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. The elders continued. "You see them as young, fragile, unworthy of fear, but you are blind. They are not weak. They are not harmless. They are unstoppable. Once challenged, they will rise, and once they rise, nothing will remain in their path." The chamber erupted in noise. The Drakthar, massive reptilian warriors, bellowed with laughter. One slammed his tail against the floor and sneered. "Unstoppable! They are insects. Their ships are thin metal scraps. Their armies are small. Their colonies are children's nests waiting to be crushed. Do not waste our time with such foolishness." The insectoid Kashar hissed in agreement, their mandibles snapping. Humans bleed like any other prey. We have seen their kind before. Young races, reckless, loud, and short-lived. They burn brightly for a moment, then vanish into dust. What makes them different? The feathered nobles of the Veiri joined in with cruel laughter. their voices shrill. Perhaps the elders grow senile. Perhaps their memories fade with age. They warn us of shadows. They frighten us with tales. But we see the truth. Humans are nothing. The Chancellor finally stood, his silver robes glimmering. He raised a hand and the noise stilled. His voice was sharp and mocking. The elders speak of danger, but I see only a primitive species clinging to a single blue world at the edge of nowhere. Yes, they have colonies. Yes, they build ships. But so do countless others. What power do they truly hold? What empire have they forged? None. They are not unstoppable. They are insignificant. He turned toward the elders and smiled with arrogance. Perhaps you fear the humans because you mistake their passion for strength. But passion burns out. Strength endures. And humans are weak. They will not endure. The chamber roared with approval. Species from every corner of the galaxy mocked and laughed. The elders had never been laughed at before, but now their warning was treated as a joke. Yet the elders did not laugh. They did not smile. Their faces remained grave, their glowing eyes fixed on the Chancellor. "You do not understand," they said softly. Their voice was like wind in a storm, carrying sorrow and certainty. "You look only at weapons, at fleets, at numbers. You measure strength by ships and armies. But humans are not like you. Their strength lies deeper. Strike them, and they will bleed. Wound them, and they will cry. But they will not fall. They will rise again. And when they rise, they will rise together. They will fight until the stars themselves burn cold. They are not unstoppable because of what they own. They are unstoppable because of what they are." The chamber grew silent, for a heartbeat. For a moment, even the mocking voices stilled, unsettled by the weight of the words. But silence quickly gave way to laughter again. The Drakthar shook their wings and jeered. Stories, myths, old fools speaking riddles, the Kashar hissed in delight. Then let us test these so-called humans. Let the Zorath Empire crush them, and we shall see if they rise. The Vayari nobles sang cruel songs, their melodies sharp as knives. The Chancellor raised his hand once more, and the laughter grew quiet. He looked at the elders with cold disdain. "We thank you for your warning," he said mockingly, "but the Council will not be ruled by fear of a primitive world. If the humans are tested, they will break, and when they break, you will see that your words were only smoke." The elders bowed their heads. Their voices, tired and sorrowful, filled the chamber one last time. "You will regret this. You laugh today, but the day will come when your laughter will die. Remember our words when that day arrives. Remember that we spoke the truth, even when you mocked us." With that, the elders withdrew. Their glowing forms faded into the shadows of the chamber, leaving behind a silence heavy with unease. But the council quickly pushed aside that unease. The laughter returned louder than before, covering their doubts. They mocked the humans, they mocked the elders, and they mocked the very idea that such a small species could ever be a threat. Yet far away, on a small blue world orbiting a yellow sun, humanity went on living, unaware that its name had been spoken in the Council of Stars, unaware that its destiny was about to change, unaware that soon the galaxy would test them, and when that test came, the words of the elders would no longer sound like riddles. They would sound like prophecy. The galaxy did not wait long to test the elders' words. Arrogance has its own hunger, and it was the Zorath Empire that carried it first. The Zorath were creatures of iron scales and burning pride. For centuries, they had ruled their corner of the stars with cruelty and fire. Their fleets were vast, their worlds fortified, their soldiers raised from birth to kill without question. To them, humans were nothing more than easy prey, a chance to expand their empire with little resistance. The Council did not stop them. The Chancellor did not speak against them. No one lifted a voice in defense of Earth. After all, what was one young species compared to the power of the Zorath? So the Zorath struck. The attack began at the colonies far from Earth itself. Mars was the first. It had been a beacon of human hope, a red desert slowly turning green under patient hands. Cities domed in glass glittered under its sun. Children played in artificial parks and farms stretched across the plains, but all of it was shattered when the Zorath descended. Their ships came like black wings blotting out the sky. Fire fell upon the domes, and glass exploded into shards that cut through flesh. Atmosphere fled into space, carrying screams with it. Families clung to one another as oxygen bled away. Within hours, Mars was silent except for burning ruins. Europa followed. It was a small colony, a place of science and discovery, where humans studied the frozen ocean beneath the ice. They had no weapons, only instruments, only dreams of learning. The Zorath broke them without mercy. Habitats cracked open. Scientists, who had dedicated their lives to peaceful study, froze in the dark void, their bodies drifting in the icy rings. One by one, the outer colonies fell. Mining stations were reduced to ash. Trade routes were cut. Ships that tried to flee were hunted down and torn apart. Every victory was a feast for the Zorath, and every loss was a knife in humanity's heart. On Earth, the news spread like fire. Screens lit up with reports of burning colonies, with images of children gasping for air, with desperate calls for help cut short by silence. Mothers screamed as they saw the names of lost sons. Fathers buried their heads in their hands. Brothers and sisters stared in disbelief at the faces of loved ones who would never come home. The council watched from afar, but they did not send help. Instead, they laughed. In the chamber, the Drakthar beat their wings in delight. The humans fall as easily as we said. So much for unstoppable prey, the Kashar hissed with satisfaction. Their blood spills like water. Their bones crack like shells. Where is their strength now? The Vayari sang cruel songs of mockery. Their melodies echoed in the crystal hall. Even the Chancellor allowed himself a smile. The elders have frightened us with tales, but now we see the truth. Humans are weak. The Zorath will wipe them clean, and the galaxy will never speak of them again. But in the quiet, the elders bowed their heads. Their glowing eyes closed in sorrow, for they knew what the others did not. They whispered to one another, their voices barely heard. Now it begins. They think this is the end of humans. They are wrong. This is only the beginning. On Earth, grief turned to something else. At first, the people mourned. Tears flowed in rivers. Funerals filled the skies with ashes and prayers. But humans did not stop at mourning. Their pain became anger. Their sorrow became fire. Mothers who had lost children began working in factories, building weapons with hands that once built toys. Fathers who had buried